Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just want to record a video based on a range session that I had recently where, it just kind of solidified a lot of things that, I just want to document. And these are like my foundational, elements for hitting the irons well. So I've made a lot of progress on the driver. I feel like I have understanding, like for me, it's not so much obviously hitting every shot perfectly, which is impossible, but after I hit a poor one, I want to know the reasons why, and then that's comforting. And then I know that I could maybe work on fixing it, and then that type of thing. And usually it breaks down to like a few things that are the most common, and then that's the same thing that I've done here. With my irons, just sort of. I have three of the main issues that I realize cause me the biggest trouble, and then ways that I can prevent those, with either a good setup, good backswing, good transition, and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I want to sort of document here, and then, build off of it. I think the thing that I've realized now more than ever is my setup already puts me in a bad position with my irons and my woods, is that, and even I've just noticed this when I stand up, that my shoulders tend to be tilted, or shifted, turned a little bit just naturally. Maybe it's just the way that I sleep. If I'm, sleeping on one side more than the other, and just the way my body has been over the years, it's just, I'm not perfectly like, square. And, that's something I have to be aware of, because especially with the driver too, like the more that we're set up open to the target, it actually takes away from our shoulder tilt, this tilt that we want to deliver, an upward or at least a flat blow to the ball. And so once the shoulders get open, then it actually tilts the shoulders flatter. And so you don't want that. And also what I've noticed is that that's not an issue so much with the irons, but I'll pull it more, and I'll hit these kind of draws, which could purely just be, from my setup, my shoulders being open and then I'm pulling it along that line. And so it can lead to inconsistent strikes, and then I won't have like, a consistent ball flight, in a way to like achieve a particular target regularly. If, my shoulders are open, then I'll have to compensate for that or swing along that path, which is right at the target often. And so what it does is it gives my brain a false sense of the fact that I'm already open. And so if you're already sort of turned to the right, then your body's just going to continue to make room along that, that path with your upper body, and that's really what I've been working on not doing with irons and driver, is making sure that the downswing is focused from the ground up. And so that's one of the major issues, is that your brain sort of sees, well, okay, the shoulders are already open, so let's just, continue along that path and feed that. And that's not what I want. So the first thing that I'm doing now, and then even just when I'm standing along something that's, a straight line, I'll just line up my feet to it and then make sure my shoulders line up and then look down that path, and so, if I'm just, standing around or even in my apartment. And so just know that that's going to feel closed to me. It's going to feel like I'm actually pointed left of the target, but I'm actually square. And then I have to trust hitting along that line, because ideally I want a straight ball flight. I don't want to play with a fade or a draw or anything. So, and then I can assess the ball flight from there as a starting point, as a form of a calibration. So I just have to trust it. So when I'm setting up, I literally feel like I'm closing my right shoulder, but it's actually squaring it up, and just trust it, And so the nice thing about it too is it helps bring my shoulder closer to my chin, which is what I want in the backswing. And so when it's open, it's got to like, work more to kind of get under and get a full shoulder turn. And so it kind of like shortens the distance, so to speak, for me to get to a turn. So I can basically effectively add that to my shoulder turn in the backswing. And it's significant, just standing here, like my shoulders naturally tilt open, shift open. So That's first thing, I'm always doing, and I always need to just check when I set up to my irons and just trust it. It's just kind of a lazy man's way to set up open, and it gives a sense that we're going to hit it more accurately, but it won't ultimately. Another thing I want to just experiment is ball position. I think I tend to let it creep up too much, and that also could be related to my shoulders being open, is that when the shoulders are open, then it feels like the center point is further up. But when I close it, it kind of moves it back. So imagine like if I'm set up open, my center line or near my heart will be a bit forward. And then when I square it, it'll move it back. So, I've noticed that, it might be creeping up too far with my irons. And so, and with my driver, I think as well, just thinking about it now that, once I sort of square up my shoulders, I should be able to get the ball in the correct position. So with the driver, should be off like the inside of your front foot, basically around this area, in your chest. And then it'll actually help me not turn the ball over to the right, and hit draws and hooks, which is what I want when you move it further back. Obviously, there's a limit to that, but it's more cut inducive. And so that's a good thing. And so that's the first thing that I have to be aware of just in my setup. And then, just continue to make sure that I'm not standing too far away, which is one thing that I tend to do. And then that again promotes more of like a left to right ball flight for me, which I'm left-handed, which I don't want. So the cool thing about this session though was that it was really simple, and I was hitting a 3-iron during this range session a couple days ago, and it's a 20 degree, so it's not easy to hit. Okay, it's my UDI iron, but it's kind of like a litmus test for me. If I'm hitting my 2 and 3 irons well, my 1 iron off the ground, I don't hit it very often, and it's 14 degrees, so it's like it's not anything that I would use regularly. But if I'm hitting my 2 and 3 iron well off the ground, then I don't know, like to me that's the litmus test for being a good iron player for me. My wedges right now are poor, but I just got new ones, and I think these things that I'm working on here is the issues with those. But I'm not saying wedges are easy to hit, but if I can get these down and consistent, which I was, it's exciting, and then for me, the cool thing about what I'm going to say here is that the ball was going higher, and I understood why it was going higher, and that was great. And a lot of it had to do with this next point of shoulder turn. And so once I get my shoulders kind of squared up, and then my takeaway is not just arms, I'm actually like, turning everything. So I get into my hips. Then, the shoulder turn dictated everything at that point. So I was like experimenting with like a weaker shoulder turn, which was my default was for a long time. I'm moving away from that, hopefully. And then doing a slower transition, I still did okay, but I would tend to hit it thin because I didn't really have enough time to really load up, and I had to come out of it a bit, but usually still fairly straight. But so I did all the sort of combinations, and I was able to see, consistent results. And so what I did from that point was then increase the shoulder turn, but always do a slower transition. And then the ball was being hit flush and actually with a fade, with a cut, and I was standing a bit closer to it to help that. And so I started baking in one thing at a time. So I always did a slower transition. I didn't pull down on the club. And then that was a must, for me. And so that can cover, a multitude of problems. Just having a slower transition, even if I don't do the best shoulder turn, as if I don't rush the downswing, then my lower body can still be engaged, and then shallow out the club and give me something to work with. And so that's what I started experimenting with. And then I started doing like what I felt like was an exaggerated turn, which was still not really anywhere close to 90. I was hitting them really good, and then getting quite a bit out, from this 3-iron. And, this was off the ground, and occasionally I would hit it still fat where, maybe the transition was quick or I didn't clear fast enough, but they were still pretty good, very acceptable. And so I was experimenting with the amount of shoulder turn. And then I would like sometimes just not do it fully, and then I would get a result of usually a thin shot, and then I would do more, and then I would get a good shot, and I would continue that feel, and I could do them like one after the other. So I realized after I had a good setup, and then I just focused on making sure I made a full turn, and then, not rushing the transition. And so the transition, to me, I want to think of it now as a change in direction, not as a movement or anything like that. It's simply just going from the hands going away to now working towards the ball. But that's it. They're not rushed or anything like that. And, none of that. And so that's, I don't even want to think of it as a fall or like a movement, just simply changing direction, and then preserving those angles with rotation leads to leg. And then you have, the acceleration added after the club shallowed out, ready to be delivered. So that's what I want to call it, actually, a transition or a change in direction. And so once I thought of it like that, it really smoothed out that region, and so that's a must. There's no reason for me to bring the club back quickly, first and foremost, which helps slow the transition down. And then I've talked about that in my driver videos. But, however fast I bring it back, like, don't rush the transition. And so just think of it as just simply, I'm just changing direction, and then that's it. And so it won't feel like a pull or anything, and pulling the handle down or none of that. So that's important. And then it really does allow a much smoother swing, and it just feels more repeatable, because once you pull down, you lose any kind of like rhythm. And so that's important. So that's becoming a staple now in my swing. It's a must have. Like, the amount of shoulder turn, it varies because it's not an exact, sort of science, but I can't do it exactly the same amount, but I have to bake in a slow transition, for me to make it work. Other people will do a quote faster transition, but everything else is going faster. And so they can do it, and so it's relative to your other body movements, but slow is, for me, my feel is just think of it as a change in direction because my swing is naturally quick with the hands. And so slow is still, might even be faster than, other people do it. So it's for me personally. So that's a must, and so there's no way I can have a decent shot if that's not there. And so that's critical. And then the next thing that I started focusing on was just making sure I get to the right side, because sometimes I'll hang back. This is one of my misses. And so I sometimes don't even necessarily know why I'm triggering that, but it usually is related to the transition being too fast. And so if that's fast, either I can get through and come out to quote unquote make room, or I just don't even have time to even turn. I didn't turn at all, and then I just lift up and then hit something bad, and I hang back on my trail side. So the next thing that I was consciously thinking in the backswing during my swing, and then pre-shot thought, was just get over the right side. It's almost like whenever the club was going back, my mind was just like turned all the backswing off, and I was just like, get to the right side, the lead side for me. And it was great because it's, again, almost no matter how much I was turning the shoulders, as long as I, didn't rush the transition, I could hit a decent shot. And I was just kind of not even caring how far the club went back. I just didn't pull down, and then I just got to my right side, and I was hitting consistent shots. Again, this is a lot easier to do on the range because it's just one after the other. The brain is just doing it relative, to the last shot. But these are just concepts, that I feel are the only things that I can really control, unless they're like setup related or something like that. So, this is these are the foundations, and then to me, people who like get really good, they bake these principles into their swing so they don't violate them really ever. And then they can go and optimize from that point, use the ground forces and sync up everything and that kind of thing. But that's like for people who want to squeeze that extra little bit out. But I'm not like starving for distance. Like, I have no issues. Like my 3-iron, I'm pretty sure, I can hit that easily, 215, in the air or whatever. When I was hitting those good shots. So, whatever, I could, if I did a little bit more, I could get a little bit more out of it, but that's not a big deal for me. But baking in these concepts is a must, for sure. Like definitely like a slow transition or just thinking it as a change in direction, and then always getting to my lead side, and making that a priority. And then the shoulder turn is the third thing. And so the more the better though. So the more that I did it, I started getting a higher ball flight, which means I was getting higher ball speed. And so it's like a knob, that I can change and tune to get different distances and stuff, and then quality of contact. But I should really focus on getting as far as I can, and as far as I can still is not as far as other people can go. But it's enough for me to get what I want, consistency. And so to load up behind the ball. And so that's the order that I need to always, and it's the way it will work is that just the slow transition always, getting to the right side always, and then hopefully I have the patience on the backswing to finish the turn, and then that will help make sure I hit the best strike possible. But it has to be those things first, because a fast transition will mess up everything else. It doesn't matter. You could do the fullest shoulder turn, pull down, and then your lower body's not given the signal to go, and then it doesn't matter. You just hit it on a bad line harder kind of thing. It doesn't make a difference. So that's the fundamental thing. The common denominator for good swings for me is always just the transition feeling like a redirection, and then getting to my right side, which means that the hips are now going and then staying, in motion. And then the distance will be governed by the amount that I turn. So another thing too is the grip. The deeper it feels into my top hand, again, it feels deeper, but I still even then have a strong grip. It feels in the palms, but it's not. It's less strong than what I normally do, where I'm like the hand's almost flat. It's like I can still see maybe three, maybe all the knuckles, but it's not like cranked over like this. And so that feeling for me feels like this hand won't twist much. And so that feeling of keeping that club deep in my right hand is important for all my clubs. And so, it's going to feel weird because my natural tendency is to grab the club and almost have the back of the hand facing the sky. So it's an extremely strong grip. And so instead of like that, I want it to be like that, where I can still see most of the knuckles, but it's not like I'm choking the thing. So that's important. And then, just having not like spaghetti loose arms, but like just not feeling like tense, in the forearms or anything, like not clenching, because that doesn't allow the redirection to shallow the club. That's the important thing for me, is that when I am doing this change in direction, the club has to be able to fall, into the slot. And it's harder to do that when you're gripping it tight, because the tendency is then, if you're gripping the club tight, to continue that journey towards the ball. And so that's not good. It promotes an upper body only swing, and that's not what I want. So that's really it, for me. And then that was leading to really good results, and I have a feeling it's gonna fix my irons as well. Like the shorter the club, I tend to think I can get away with an armsier swing more and more, when I shouldn't really feel the arms involvement in the swing really at all. They should be just very passive, and then guiding the energy, and then accelerating it, amplifying it a little bit at the end, but you don't feel it at that point. And so unless you hit it poorly, and so that's when you don't want to feel it. But that's really it. And I think it'll fix, my issue with my wedges. I just have to slow the arms down. I have to make a full turn, and it's not as full as like a longer club, but it's I need to always get back there, the most, until I can't anymore. Another thing that was important that I want to really think about too is that I started experimenting with like my hands feeling more out along the takeaway, and then up. Like there was like a wall in front of me, and I was just keeping my hands up, instead of the hands going back so much. And again, I don't even know if it's really changing my backswing, but like just that thought where I was keeping the hands in front of me and then up like this, I was hitting much better strikes. And the reason I think that that's true is that if we rotate like this, we don't have as much degree of freedom. But if we rotate with a bit of like tilt, then we can get a little bit more depth. And so I think it's my swing is not as flat, basically. And so it seems to encourage a bit more freedom for me to turn a little bit with my shoulders, like a little bit more. And so if I didn't have this thought, I was still hitting it okay. But I found that when I did do that, it freed me up even more, to get a bit more, squeeze a little bit more on the turn. So I want to continue that, and then I have a feeling that it's getting my hand in a better position up, and then instead of behind me. And when it comes behind, the tendency is to go like that, and so it's more an up and down kind of feel, a bit more old school, I guess. And then it's good for me because it allows me to hit cuts. It's like it's an anti-draw or hook action to have the hands higher and then be along more of a vertical plane. And so it's taking my arc and basically making it a bit more vertical. And so I like that feel, and then it was really good. And so it almost feels a bit like sort of Bubba Watson, where he's kind of like getting his hands way up here. And so that's the feel. And obviously my swing looks different than his, but that was the last thing that I was just experimenting with. And, it'd be worth probably having, a video, down the line and seeing if it's actually that thought is changing anything, because it doesn't feel that different, but it's a different instruction for sure. And then, it feels different, but I don't know if it's actually like making that tangible of a difference in the backswing. So that's the last thing. And so that's what, I'll work on, and then try and see if that's really something that, I need to bake in, as one of these quote unquote principles. But so take home for me is close that shoulder, just trust that that's square, even though it feels closed. And then just double check the ball position, wedges, middle of the stance, and then the longer irons like a little bit forward, not much, and so a ball or two at the most. And so don't put it way up in the stance. I'm going to hit more fat shots because we can't drop the arc that far forward with the irons. You can with the driver, but even then, don't get it too far up. And so it's risky. The tendency is the body's going to either just try and come up to get to it, or it's just going to miss it and hit the ground and then the ball. So don't do that. And so again, I just have to trust that I'm going to be making room in the backswing, not trying to get more behind the ball by pushing it further up in the stance. So don't cheat. And so do that. And then, so close the shoulders, make sure the ball position's not creeping up too far. And then at that point, I have to, before I swing, especially definitely when I'm practicing, is always have a slow transition, and so that's a must. That's first and foremost. And then always make a commitment in my backswing. Doesn't matter where the shoulders go, here, 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 here. Now it's just get over to that side. That's all I'm thinking, and I was just like having fun with it. I was like, I almost could bring it back wherever I wanted. And then this allows people to hit even like knockdown shots where you can bring it halfway, but as long as you're committed to get to the right side, you can still make good contact. Again, as long as you don't rush the transition. And so, that's key. And then again, the last thing is the shoulder turn. And so, the fourth thing that I'm going to just experiment with a little bit more is just keeping the hands more vertical on the backswing. And I don't know what it is, but it just allows me to feel a bit more locked and tilty. It literally just kind of feels like I'm more like tilted and then turned and then coiled is the right word for it. And then the more you coil and then don't uncoil that too quickly, it allows you to generate power. So that's those are my iron feels, and they apply from my one iron all the way to my wedge. And so I just want to document that, because to me, like all the golf instruction that I see online, it's not anything that a person can like actually implement. It's just like, your wrist should do this and bowed wrist and all this kind of stuff. Like those to me are like optimizations, like once you have the concepts down, first a person's going to grip the club the way that it's comfortable to them. And then that's very difficult to change. And then, their height and then certain things about just who they are. is going to govern their flexibility, and all that's going to govern certain things. But as long as they don't violate certain principles, like a quick transition that's not synced up with the rest of the body, or not getting over to the right side, or doing a weak shoulder turn and that kind of thing, then then you can, like, you have a good foundation. Then if you want to, like, sync up everything even tighter, then you can start, maybe using the ground forces more, bowing your wrist, doing all these different things that people do to keep the face square longer and all that kind of stuff. But those are the principles, for me, that will lead to good iron shots. And then once I bake those in and make them consistent, then you can start optimizing on that. Hope everyone's doing well.